The rain pattered against the windows of Haley Mitchell's modest suburban home in Springfield, Massachusetts. The dreary April weather matched her mood as she sifted through a box of old photographs in her living room. Today marked 15 years since she had received the news that changed her life forever. 15 years since two solemn-faced officers had appeared at her doorstep. 15 years since her world had collapsed. "Mom, have you seen my blue sweater?" 20-year-old Lily called from upstairs, her voice pulling Haley back to the present. "Check the laundry basket in my room," Haley replied, quickly wiping away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. She didn't want Lily to see her crying, not today. They had both agreed years ago that anniversaries shouldn't be about mourning, but about celebrating Connor's life. Haley's fingers traced the outline of Connor's face in their wedding photo. His strong jawline, those kind green eyes that crinkled at the corners when he laughed, the slight scar above his right eyebrow from a childhood accident. Even after all these years, she remembered every detail. Sergeant Connor Mitchell, 35th Infantry Regiment, U.S. Army, deployed to Afghanistan in 2009. Declared killed in action on April 17, 2010. Body never recovered. The official report stated that Connor's unit had been ambushed near Kandahar. Their vehicle hit an IED, and subsequent enemy fire had made immediate recovery of casualties impossible. By the time reinforcements secured the area, insurgents had removed several bodies, including Connor's. Despite exhaustive efforts, the military never recovered his remains. Haley had clung to hope for months, refusing to believe he was gone without proof. But eventually, reality set in. The military presented compelling evidence. Connor's dog tags recovered at the site, DNA matching his blood type, eyewitness accounts from surviving squad members. With crushing finality, Haley had accepted the flag folded into a perfect triangle at his memorial service. "I'm heading to work," Lily announced, appearing in the doorway with her backpack slung over one shoulder. At 20, she was the spitting image of her father. Same sandy brown hair, same determined set to her jaw. "Professor Reynolds moved our study group to this afternoon, so I'll be home late." "Drive safely," Haley said, forcing a smile. "The roads are slick." After Lily left, Haley returned the photographs to their box and opened her laptop. Though she'd taken the day off from her job at the hospital, she still had emails to answer and bills to pay. Life went on as it had for 15 years, one day at a time. She had never remarried, despite her friends' gentle encouragement over the years. There had been a few dates, but nothing serious. Part of her heart remained frozen in 2010, unwilling to let go completely. Instead, she had poured herself into raising Lily and advancing her career as a nurse practitioner. It was enough, she told herself. It had to be. Absent-mindedly scrolling through social media as she sipped her coffee, Haley responded to birthday wishes from colleagues and checked on a neighbor's recovery from surgery. She rarely used social media for anything more than keeping up with local friends and family. A notification appeared. Karen Wilson, an army wife she'd met during Connor's service, had tagged her in a post commemorating fallen soldiers. Haley clicked on it, scanning through the heartfelt message and photographs of smiling men and women in uniform. As she scrolled through the comments, something caught her eye. Someone named Diana Brooks had commented, sharing her gratitude for military families. Curious, Haley clicked on the unfamiliar profile. Diana Brooks lived in Portland, Oregon. Her profile showed a woman in her early 40s with sleek black hair and a warm smile. Haley was about to navigate away when she froze, her coffee mug slipping from her fingers and shattering on the hardwood floor. There, among Diana's recent photos, was an image that stopped Haley's heart. A man stood with his arm around Diana on a hiking trail, Mount Hood visible in the background. The photo was dated just 2 weeks ago. The coffee spread across the floor, but Haley didn't move. She couldn't breathe. Her trembling fingers zoomed in on the man's face. The same strong jawline, the same green eyes, now with crow's feet at the corners. And there, barely visible beneath the brim of his baseball cap, the distinctive scar above his right eyebrow. The caption read, "5 wonderful years with this man. Happy anniversary, Ethan. Love you more than words can say." Ethan, not Connor. But it was him, older, with slightly grayer hair and a trimmed beard, but unmistakably Connor Mitchell, her husband, the father of her child, the man who had supposedly died 15 years ago in Afghanistan. Haley's mind raced as she stared at the photo, unable to look away. How was this possible? Had he been captured, suffered amnesia, or had he chosen to disappear, to abandon his family and start anew with another woman? With shaking hands, she grabbed her phone and dialed the one person who might understand. "James, it's Haley," she said when Connor's former commanding officer answered. "I need your help. I think Connor might be alive." "Haley, slow down." James Parker's voice was steady, the same calming tone he'd used when he'd personally delivered Connor's belongings to her after the official notification. "Tell me exactly what you're looking at." James had retired from the army 5 years ago as a lieutenant colonel, but he'd kept in touch with Haley, checking in on holidays and occasionally stopping by when his consulting work brought him to the East Coast. He'd been Connor's commanding officer, mentor, and friend. "I'm sending you the photo now," Haley said, her fingers fumbling as she took a screenshot and texted it to James. "Tell me I'm not crazy. Tell me that's him." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for what felt like an eternity. "James, I'm looking at it," he replied. "I'm looking at..." His voice now tight with tension. "The resemblance is remarkable." "It's not a resemblance," Haley insisted, pacing through the coffee puddle, oblivious to the wet socks and broken ceramic. "It's Connor. Look at the scar above his eyebrow. That's the exact scar he got when he fell out of a tree when he was 12. He told you that story during that fishing trip you all took before deployment." Another pause. "Haley, I need you to listen to me very carefully," James finally said. "Don't contact this woman. Don't comment on any photos. Don't do anything that might alert them." "Them? Who's them? You mean Connor and this Diana person?" Haley felt anger rising in her chest. "He's my husband, James. He's Lily's father." "I don't know what's going on here," James admitted. "But if that is Connor, and I'm not saying it is, there could be serious reasons why he's living under a different identity. Reasons that might put you, him and Lily in danger if you start asking questions publicly." Haley sank onto the couch, suddenly feeling the weight of what she was seeing. "What are you saying? That he's in some kind of witness protection? That the army lied to me about his death?" "I'm not saying anything definitively," James replied carefully. "But I've seen enough strange things during my career that I can't dismiss this outright. The official report said Connor's body was never recovered. There have been cases, rare ones, where soldiers were captured, held for years, or what?" Haley demanded. "Or deep cover operations that required severing all previous connections." The implication hit Haley like a physical blow. "You think Connor voluntarily disappeared? Left us? Left his 5-year-old daughter?" "I don't know," James said, "but I think we need to proceed carefully. I have contacts who might be able to help us look into this discreetly. Can you hold off on doing anything for 48 hours? Give me time to make some calls." Haley stared at the photo on her screen. The man, Connor or not, looked happy, relaxed, standing in the sunshine with his arm around a stranger. 15 years of grief and single parenthood compressed into a ball of rage in her chest. "Fine. 2 days," she agreed tersely. "Then I'm booking a flight to Portland." After hanging up, Haley cleaned up the broken mug and coffee, her mind racing. She couldn't focus, couldn't process the implications of what she'd discovered. She needed more information. Ignoring James's warning, she began to scroll through Diana Brooks's profile. The account wasn't heavily restricted. Haley could see posts going back several years. Diana was a physical therapist at a rehabilitation center in Portland. She posted about hiking, her golden retriever named Scout, and various charity events. Ethan Reynolds first appeared in her photos 3 years ago. Before that, no mention of him. According to one post, they had met when he came to her clinic for treatment after a rock climbing accident. They were married 2 years ago in a small ceremony on the Oregon coast. Haley found herself staring at a wedding photo. Diana in a simple white dress, Ethan in a grey suit. His smile didn't reach his eyes, the same way Connor's hadn't when he was uncomfortable but trying to be polite. There wasn't much information about Ethan's life. He apparently worked as a wilderness guide, leading hiking and climbing expeditions in the Cascades. No mention of a military background, no mention of a past life, no mention of a daughter on the other side of the country. The sound of the garage door opening startled Haley. She quickly closed the browser tabs and wiped her browsing history, a reflexive action that surprised her. "Mom!" Lily called, dropping her keys on the counter. "Study group got cancelled. Professor Reynolds had some family emergency." She walked into the living room and stopped short. "Have you been crying?" Haley touched her face, realizing her cheeks were wet, just looking at old photos, anniversary and all. Lily's expression softened. She sat beside her mother and laid her head on Haley's shoulder. "I was thinking about him today too. Wish I had more memories of him." The irony of the situation struck Haley like a physical blow. Should she tell Lily what she'd found? Show her the photo of the man who might be her father, living a new life with a new name and a new wife? The man who had missed her first day of school, her high school graduation, her acceptance to college? "He would be so proud of you," Haley said instead, the words catching in her throat. That night, after Lily had gone to bed, Haley sat in the darkness of her kitchen with a glass of wine, staring at her phone. James had texted that he was making inquiries, but had nothing concrete to report yet. The photo of Ethan Reynolds glowed on her screen. On impulse, she opened her contacts and scrolled to a number she rarely used. "Detective Reyes? It's Haley Mitchell. I know it's been a while, but I need your help with something unusual." Michael Reyes had worked with Haley on several cases where her patients at the hospital had been victims of crimes. He'd retired from the Springfield Police Department 2 years ago, but had started a private investigation firm. "I need to find someone," she told him, her voice steadier than she expected. "And I need absolute discretion." Detective Michael Reyes's office was tucked away on the second floor of a converted Victorian house downtown, the kind of place you'd miss if you weren't looking for it. The privacy suited Haley as she slipped inside early the next morning, having told Lily she was running errands. "When you called last night, I admit I was intrigued," Reyes said, gesturing for Haley to sit. His salt and pepper hair had more salt than the last time she'd seen him, but his eyes remained sharp and attentive. "But now that I've done some preliminary research, I'm more than intrigued. I'm concerned." Haley had emailed him the photo and all the information she'd gathered about Diana Brooks and Ethan Reynolds. "What did you find?" she asked, tension knotting her shoulders. Reyes slid a folder across his desk. "Ethan Reynolds appears to have existed for approximately 7 years. Driver's license issued in Oregon in 2018. Social security number checks out. Credit history begins around the same time. On paper, he's a real person who materialized in his mid-30s. "That's not possible," Haley said, scanning the documents. "People don't just appear." "They do if they have help," Reyes countered. "New identities can be created, especially with government assistance. Witness protection, covert operations, deep cover assignments." "That's what James suggested," Haley murmured. "Lieutenant Colonel Parker is a smart man. Did he mention he called me this morning?" Haley's head snapped up. "He what?" "Apparently, you both had the same idea," Reyes said with a wry smile. "He asked me to convince you to wait while he investigates through his military channels. I told him I work for my clients, not for retired army officers." A wave of gratitude washed over Haley. "Thank you. I can't just sit and wait." "But," Reyes held up a finger, "he's not wrong about proceeding with caution. If your husband, or someone who looks remarkably like him, is living under a government-crafted identity, there could be serious repercussions to exposing him, for everyone involved." Haley leaned forward. "I need to know if it's him, Michael. I need to know if my daughter's father has been alive all this time while we mourned him." Reyes nodded, understanding in his eyes. He'd lost his own wife to cancer years ago. He knew grief intimately. "I've booked a flight to Portland tomorrow morning. I'll conduct surveillance, gather information, and confirm whether this Ethan Reynolds is Connor Mitchell." "I'm coming with you," Haley said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "I expected you'd say that," Reyes replied, sliding another piece of paper across the desk. "It was an airline confirmation. Your ticket is for the same flight. I took the liberty." "What about Lily?" The question had been tormenting Haley all night. "Do I tell her?" Reyes's expression grew serious. "That's a personal decision, but professionally, I'd wait until we have confirmation. No sense upending her life if this turns out to be a remarkable coincidence." The thought had occurred to Haley too, that perhaps this was just a man who bore an uncanny resemblance to Connor. But the scar, the mannerisms she could detect even in photos, her heart knew better. "I'll tell her I'm going to a nursing conference," Haley decided. "It's not the first time I've had to travel for work." When Haley returned home, she found Lily in the kitchen making lunch, her laptop open to a research paper she was writing. "Hey, I need to go to Portland for a few days," Haley said, trying to sound casual as she put away groceries. "Last-minute nursing conference. I'll leave tomorrow and be back by the weekend." Lily looked up, a flicker of suspicion crossing her face. "That's weird timing. You okay, Mom? You've seemed off since yesterday." Sometimes Haley forgot how perceptive her daughter was. "Just a lot on my mind with the anniversary," she deflected. "The conference will be a good distraction." Lily seemed to accept this, returning to her paper. "Professor Reynolds is still out for some family emergency, so at least I'll have time to finish this while you're gone." Haley nearly dropped the carton of eggs she was holding. "Reynolds? Yeah, my psychology professor. I've mentioned him before." "Right," Haley said, her mind racing. Reynolds wasn't an uncommon name, but the coincidence felt jarring. "What's his first name again?" "Daniel," Lily replied, oblivious to her mother's sudden tension. "He's been teaching at Springfield Community for about 3 years." "Why?" "No reason," Haley said quickly, "just making conversation." That night, after packing her suitcase, Haley sat on her bed staring at her phone. James had texted, "Made contact with a reliable source. Nothing concrete yet. Still advise waiting." She typed back, "I'm going to Portland tomorrow. I need to see for myself." His response came quickly. "I figured you might. Be careful. My source mentioned potential classified elements to this situation." Classified. The word hung in Haley's mind as she tried to sleep. What could Connor have been involved in that would require faking his death, abandoning his family, and creating a new life under a new name? And if it was truly classified, what dangers might she be walking into by investigating? The next morning dawned clear and bright, a stark contrast to Haley's turbulent emotions as she kissed Lily goodbye. "Call me when you land," Lily instructed, hugging her mother tightly. "And bring me back something from Portland. I hear they've got cool bookstores." "Will do," Haley promised, fighting back tears. If her suspicions were correct, she was bringing back something far more significant than a souvenir. The flight to Portland was a blur of anxiety and anticipation. Reyes sat beside her, occasionally offering reassuring comments, but mostly giving her space with her thoughts. They landed shortly after noon local time, rented a car, and checked into adjacent rooms at a modest hotel about 10 minutes from the physical therapy clinic where Diana Brooks worked. According to her social media, she's working until 6 p.m. today, Reyes said, as they sat in his room, reviewing their approach. "I've confirmed Ethan Reynolds is scheduled to lead a hiking group tomorrow, but should be home this evening. Their address is a townhouse in the Selwood neighborhood. So we just..." "What? Watch their house?" The reality of what they were doing suddenly struck Haley. She was essentially stalking a man who might or might not be her presumed dead husband. "For now, yes," Reyes said. "I want to observe him in person. Take some high-resolution photos for comparison. There are specific markers, scars, moles, the way people move, that can't be faked and don't change much over time." Haley nodded, feeling both determined and slightly ill. "And then..." Reyes gave her a measured look. Then you decide what you want to do with the information. Confront him, contact authorities, walk away. That will be your choice. As the afternoon sun began its descent over Portland's western hills, Haley found herself in the passenger seat of their rental car, parked with a clear view of Diana Brooks's townhouse. The neighborhood was pleasant. Tree-lined streets, well-maintained homes, children riding bikes along the sidewalks. "That's her," Reyes said quietly as a dark blue Subaru pulled into the driveway. A woman with black hair stepped out, gathering bags from the passenger seat. Diana Brooks looked exactly like her photos. Athletic build, confident posture, friendly face. Haley's hands clenched into fists in her lap. This woman had been living with Connor, if it was indeed Connor, for years, sharing meals with him, sleeping beside him, building a life with him, while Haley and Lily mourned his loss. "We'll stay until he arrives," Reyes murmured, "then head back to the hotel to review what we've learned." They didn't have to wait long. 20 minutes later, a grey pickup truck turned into the driveway. Haley's breath caught in her throat as a man stepped out. Even from a distance, there was no mistaking him. The height, the build, the way he carried himself, it was Connor, her Connor, alive and well and carrying groceries into another woman's home. "Oh my God," Haley whispered, tears blurring her vision. "It's him." Haley didn't remember returning to the hotel. The drive was a haze of shock and conflicting emotions. Vindication that she'd been right, rage that Connor had been alive all these years, and a profound confusion that left her feeling untethered from reality. "I need to confront him," she said, pacing Reyes's hotel room. "Now, tonight." Reyes sat at the small desk, reviewing the photographs he'd taken with a telephoto lens. "Haley, I understand the impulse, but we need to be strategic here." "Strategic?" Her voice rose. "I just saw my dead husband carrying groceries into another woman's house. What's strategic about that? If James is right about this being related to classified operations, then barging in could create serious complications," Reyes explained calmly. "Not just legal ones, safety concerns for all parties involved." Haley stopped pacing, forcing herself to take a deep breath. "Show me the photos." Reyes turned his laptop toward her. The images were startlingly clear. Connor, Ethan, she reminded herself bitterly, getting out of his truck, greeting Diana with a kiss, helping her with bags. In one photo, he was laughing at something she said, his head thrown back in a gesture so achingly familiar that Haley had to grip the edge of the desk. "It's him," she whispered. The scar above his eyebrow, the way his left eye crinkles more than his right when he smiles. Even the way he carries himself. She pointed to another image of him reaching into the truck bed. That slight hesitation when he lifts with his right arm. He dislocated his shoulder during basic training. It never healed quite right. Reyes nodded, making notes. "I've run the images through facial recognition software. Even accounting for aging, we're looking at a 97% match to your husband's military ID photo." The confirmation, even of what she already knew in her heart, hit Haley like a physical blow. She sank onto the edge of the bed. 15 years, she said, her voice hollow. 15 years of grief, of raising our daughter alone, of visiting an empty grave. Her sadness crystallized into anger. "I want answers, tonight." Before Reyes could object again, her phone rang. James Parker's name flashed on the screen. "James," she answered, putting the call on speaker. "Haley, where are you?" His voice was tense, urgent. "Portland." "I've seen him, James. It's Connor." A heavy sigh came through the speaker. "I know. My contact confirmed it. But Haley, this is bigger and more complicated than you can imagine." Reyes leaned forward. "Lieutenant Colonel, this is Michael Reyes. What exactly are we dealing with here?" "A classified operation that went sideways," James replied after a pause. "Connor wasn't killed in that ambush. He was captured, along with 2 others from his unit. The official story, the IED, the bodies being taken, that was partly true. But what happened next is where things get complicated." Haley's mouth went dry. "He was a prisoner for almost a year," James confirmed. The details are still heavily classified, but he was held by a group with connections to both insurgent forces and international arms dealers. During his captivity, he gained information about a network that extended into US military and intelligence communities, a network of people facilitating weapons sales and intelligence leaks. A year, Haley repeated, her mind racing, but that still leaves 14 years unaccounted for. When he was extracted in a covert operation, the decision was made at the highest levels to use his intelligence to dismantle the network, but they couldn't do it if anyone knew he was alive. The corrupt elements would have gone to ground or eliminated him. So they kept him dead, Haley said bitterly, and kept me and Lily in the dark. It was supposed to be temporary, James continued, a year, maybe 2, but the network was more extensive than initially thought. By the time the operation concluded, nearly 5 years had passed. Connor had been living under the Ethan Reynolds identity, building a cover as a civilian contractor with connections to the kinds of people they were investigating. And then, Reyes prompted, when James fell silent. Another long pause. And then things get murky. My contact wasn't forthcoming about the next part, but reading between the lines, I believe Connor suffered some kind of psychological break or trauma, possibly a head injury that affected his memory. Haley felt as if the floor had dropped away beneath her. Are you saying he doesn't remember us? His life before? I don't have confirmation, James said carefully, but it would explain why, when the operation ended, he didn't come home. The official record shows Ethan Reynolds was released from any further obligations to the government in 2018. He was free to resume his life as Connor Mitchell. The fact that he didn't suggests he either chose not to or couldn't, Reyes finished. The implications hit Haley in waves. Connor might not remember her, might not remember Lily, or worse, he might remember and had chosen to start fresh with someone new rather than return to his old life. I need to talk to him, she said, standing abruptly. I need to look him in the eye. Haley, James began. No, she cut him off. I've lost 15 years, James. Lily has grown up without her father. I deserve answers, not more secrecy. I agree, James said, surprising her. But please, let me make a call first. If you're determined to confront him, we should try to minimize the fallout. Some of the people Connor helped put away still have connections. There could be safety concerns. Haley checked her watch. Nearly 8 p.m. You have until tomorrow morning. Then I'm going to that house. After ending the call, she returned to her own room, her mind spinning with all she'd learned. Connor had been a prisoner, had been part of a classified operation, might not even remember his former life. She opened her phone's photo gallery, scrolling to the album she kept of old family pictures. Connor holding newborn Lily. Connor in his uniform before deployment. Connor teaching 5-year-old Lily to ride a bike during his last leave before the deployment from which he never returned. The contrast between those images and the man she'd seen today, older, apparently happy in his new life, felt like a knife twisting in her chest. Sleep was impossible. At dawn, Haley showered and dressed with mechanical precision, preparing for a confrontation she'd never imagined having. James had texted that he'd made arrangements for a controlled meeting later that day. But Haley had already decided she wouldn't wait. She met Reyes in the hotel lobby at 7 a.m. Diana's social media says she teaches a morning yoga class on Thursdays, she told him. She should be leaving the house by 7:30. That's when I want to approach him. Reyes studied her face. You're sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything. They parked down the street from the townhouse, watching as Diana emerged in yoga clothes, kissed Connor Ethan goodbye at the door, and drove away in her Subaru. Haley waited until the car turned the corner, then opened her door. Wait here, she told Reyes. This is something I need to do alone. Her legs felt leaden as she walked the short distance to the townhouse. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. 15 years of grief, confusion, and unanswered questions propelled her forward until she stood at the door. She rang the bell before she could lose her nerve. Footsteps approached from inside. The door swung open, and there he was. Connor, her husband. 15 years older, with more grey in his hair and new lines around his eyes, wearing a faded Portland Trail Blazers t-shirt and jeans. For a moment, he simply stared at her, his expression moving from polite curiosity to confusion to something like fear. "Can I help you?" he asked. Help. His voice, that voice she'd heard in dreams for 15 years, slightly hesitant. Haley struggled to find her voice. "Connor," she finally managed. "It's me, it's Haley." He took a step back, his face paling. "I think you have the wrong person. My name is Ethan." "No," Haley said, her voice stronger now. "Your name is Connor Mitchell. You're a sergeant in the U.S. Army 35th Infantry Regiment. You were deployed to Afghanistan in 2009. You have a daughter named Lily, and I'm your wife." His expression flickered. Recognition, alarm. She couldn't tell. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, but his voice wavered slightly. "I think you should leave." "Look at me, Connor," Haley insisted, stepping closer. "Really look at me. We met at your cousin's wedding in 2003. You proposed on Christmas Eve 2004. We have a daughter who just turned 20. She has your eyes, your smile, your stubborn determination." His hand gripped the doorframe, knuckles white. "Please," he said, almost a whisper. "I'm not who you think I am." "Then why do you look scared?" Haley challenged, tears blurring her vision. "If I'm just a confused stranger, why don't you look confused too?" The silence between them stretched, taut with unspoken words and buried truths. In the distance, a lawnmower hummed. A neighbor called to their child, the mundane soundtrack of a Thursday morning that felt surreal against the moment unfolding on the doorstep. "You should come inside," he finally said, stepping back from the door. Not an invitation so much as a surrender. Haley followed him into a living room that bore no traces of the man she had known. Modern furniture, abstract art on the walls, hiking and outdoor gear neatly organized on shelves. A large photograph of him and Diana on a mountain summit hung above a gas fireplace. No military memorabilia, no hints of his former life. He gestured for her to sit, then remained standing as if ready to flee. "How did you find me?" His voice was carefully controlled, but Haley could see the tension in his jaw, the same way he used to clench it when trying to contain strong emotions. "Social media," she replied simply. "After 15 years of thinking you were dead, I saw your face in a stranger's photo." He winced at the word dead, running a hand through his hair. Another gesture so achingly familiar that Haley had to grip the arm of the sofa to steady herself. "My name is Ethan Reynolds," he said, though the words sounded rehearsed. "I've lived in Portland for 7 years. Before that—" He stopped, his brow furrowing. "It's complicated. James Parker told me," Haley said, "about your capture in Afghanistan, about the classified operation afterward." Surprise flickered across his face. "James is involved in this. He still checks in on me and Lily, always has since we got news of your death." She couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. "He's the one who confirmed what I was seeing wasn't some cruel coincidence, that Ethan Reynolds is actually Connor Mitchell." He sank into a chair opposite her, his shoulders slumping. "It's not that simple." "Then explain it to me," Haley demanded, leaning forward. "Explain why my husband has been living a completely different life while I grieved him and raised our daughter alone." He began, then stopped, pressing his fingertips to his temples. "There are gaps in my memory. The doctors called it dissociative amnesia, triggered by trauma. When I was rescued from captivity, I couldn't remember much of my life before. Just fragments, images without context." Haley's heart constricted. "You couldn't remember me, or Lily?" His eyes, when they met hers, were filled with the pain that matched her own. "I remembered a woman, a child, but like photographs, without names or stories attached. The military psychologist worked with me for months, but much of my personal history remained inaccessible." "But they knew who you were," Haley said, anger rising again. "They could have contacted me. I could have helped you remember." "The operation came first," he said, and for a moment she heard the soldier in him, the man who understood duty and chain of command. "They needed what I'd learned during captivity, and they decided that my amnesia was actually an asset. I could build a new identity without the cognitive dissonance most deep cover operatives struggle with. So they just, what? Let you stay dead to us? He looked away, shame evident in his posture. I agreed to it, or Ethan did, the person I was then. They showed me files about Connor Mitchell's life, told me that was who I had been, but it felt like reading about a stranger. Haley's hands trembled, and after the operation ended, James said that was around 2018, 5 years ago. His silence was answer enough. You knew by then, she whispered, the realization like ice in her veins. You remembered, or they told you everything, and you still chose not to come back to us. It wasn't that simple, he said again, his voice strained. By then, I'd been Ethan Reynolds for nearly a decade. I'd built a life, relationships, and the memories of Connor Mitchell were still distant, clinical, like a life I'd read about rather than lived. So you just decided to let us keep thinking you were dead? The pain in Haley's chest threatened to consume her. Do you have any idea what that did to us? To Lily? She grew up without a father because you decided your new life was more convenient than your real one. It wasn't about convenience, he protested, standing abruptly. The doctors said forcing a return to my old life could trigger severe psychological consequences. And by then, so much time had passed. How could I just reappear after 8 years and expect to pick up where I left off? You couldn't, Haley acknowledged, tears streaming down her face now. But you could have given us the truth. You could have given Lily the chance to know her father, even if he wasn't the same man who left. Shame crossed his features again. I convinced myself it would be cruel, that disrupting your lives after you'd adjusted to my death would cause more pain than healing. That wasn't your decision to make, Haley said, her voice breaking. We deserved the chance to decide for ourselves if we wanted you in our lives. A key turned in the front door, startling them both. Diana Brooks entered, dressed in yoga clothes, her face flushed from exercise. She stopped short at the tableau before her, her husband standing rigid with distress, a tearful stranger on their sofa. Ethan, Diana's voice was concerned but cautious. What's going on? The look that passed between them, intimate, communicative, sent a fresh wave of pain through Haley's chest. This woman knew him in ways Haley once had built a life with the man who had walked away from his family. Diana, he said, his voice strained. This is complicated. My yoga class was cancelled, Diana explained, setting down her bag. Who's this? Her eyes moved from her husband to Haley, wariness replacing confusion. Haley stood, suddenly feeling like an intruder. My name is Haley Mitchell. Your husband was my husband too. His real name is Connor Mitchell, and he was supposedly killed in Afghanistan 15 years ago. Diana's face drained of color. She reached for the wall to steady herself. What? She's telling the truth, he said quietly. At least, her version of it. Your version? Haley's voice rose. There aren't versions of the truth, Connor. You're either Connor Mitchell, who abandoned his family, or you're an imposter wearing my dead husband's face. Diana moved to stand beside him, her hand on his arm, both protective and seeking protection. Ethan, what is she talking about? He looked between the two women, trapped between past and present, between Connor and Ethan. I need you both to listen, he said finally. There are things I haven't told either of you, things I've tried to forget. The pain in his eyes was so raw, so genuine, that Haley felt her anger falter slightly. Whatever had happened to him during that year of captivity, whatever psychological wounds had driven his decisions afterward, they were real. I'm listening, she said, sinking back onto the sofa. Diana hesitated, then joined her, leaving him standing alone before them both. The man caught between two lives, two identities, two families. I was captured in Afghanistan in 2010, he began, his voice taking on a mechanical quality, as if reciting facts rather than reliving memories. Tortured for information. During my captivity, I suffered a traumatic brain injury that affected my memory. When I was rescued almost a year later, I couldn't remember much of my previous life. Diana's hand flew to her mouth. "You told me you had a rock climbing accident that caused your memory issues." "That was the cover story they gave me," he explained, not meeting her eyes. "The government used my situation, my amnesia and the intelligence I'd gathered, for a classified operation. I became Ethan Reynolds, a man with a sketchy past and useful connections. And us?" Haley asked. "Your wife and daughter. Did you forget us completely?" His eyes met Haley's, haunted by a pain that transcended the years between them. "Not completely," he admitted. "There were fragments, dream, a woman's laugh, a child's birthday cake with 5 candles, but without context, without names or clear images." He shook his head. "The doctors called them emotional memories, feelings without the associated facts." Diana had gone very still beside Haley, her face a mask of shock and disbelief. "You've been living a lie," she whispered. "Our entire relationship is based on a fabrication." "No," he said forcefully, kneeling before her. "What's between us is real. Ethan Reynolds isn't just a cover identity anymore. It's who I became, who I am now." "But it's not who you were born as," Haley interjected. "It's not the name on our marriage certificate or on Lily's birth certificate." At the mention of Lily, his expression changed. A flicker of something like longing crossed his features. "Lily," he repeated softly. "She was 5 when I deployed. She'd just lost her first tooth." Haley's breath caught. "You remember that?" "I've been having more memories returning over the past few years," he admitted. "Fragments becoming clearer, but they still feel like someone else's life. Scenes from a movie I watched rather than lived." Diana stood abruptly, putting distance between herself and both of them. "I need to process this," she said, her voice tight with controlled emotion. "You've been married to someone else this entire time. You have a daughter." "Technically, yes," he acknowledged. "But legally, Connor Mitchell was declared dead." The marriage ended with that declaration. The clinical way he spoke of their marriage ending felt like a slap to Haley. "A technicality," she said bitterly. "Is that all it was to you?" "I didn't mean," he began, then stopped, running his hands through his hair in frustration. "This is impossible. I'm trying to explain something I don't fully understand myself." Diana's phone chimed with a text message. She glanced at it, then looked up with widened eyes. "There's a man outside watching our house. He just approached a woman in a car parked down the street." "Reyes and James," Haley realized. "They're with me," she explained quickly. "I didn't come alone." "Who exactly are they?" Diana demanded, fear edging into her voice. "A private investigator and Connor's former commanding officer," Haley replied. "They're just making sure I'm safe." "Safe from what? From me?" His voice cracked slightly. "Did you think I was dangerous?" "I didn't know what to think," Haley said honestly. "You were dead, and then you weren't. I had no idea what I was walking into." A knock at the door made them all turn. Diana hesitated, then moved to answer it, keeping a wary distance from both Haley and her husband. James Parker stood on the threshold, as imposing in civilian clothes as he had been in uniform. His eyes moved past Diana to the man he'd once commanded. "Sergeant Mitchell," he said with a nod. "It's been a long time." "Lieutenant Colonel," came the automatic response, military bearing briefly reasserting itself before confusion clouded his features again. "You shouldn't be here. None of you should be here." "I disagree," James replied, stepping inside when Diana reluctantly moved aside. "This situation has festered long enough. Too many lies, too many lives disrupted." Reyes followed James in, closing the door behind him. "Mrs. Mitchell was concerned when you didn't return to the car," he explained to Haley. "And the lieutenant colonel arrived in Portland an hour ago." The small living room now felt crowded with tension and competing truths. Diana stood apart from the others, arms wrapped around herself as if for protection. Connor, or Ethan, looked trapped, cornered by his past and present colliding. "You know more than you've told me," he said to James, accusation in his tone, "about what happened after the extraction, about why I wasn't returned to my family once I'd served my purpose." James's expression remained carefully neutral. Some decisions were made at levels above my authority. That's not good enough, Haley interjected. We've all lost 15 years because of those decisions. We deserve the full truth. James looked between them, weighing his words. The operation was compartmentalized, need-to-know basis only. What I do know is that after Sergeant Mitchell was extracted, his intelligence about infiltration of military supply chains proved more valuable than initially assessed. The operation expanded, requiring deeper cover and more time. But my memory issues, Connor Ethan pressed. The doctors said they couldn't predict when or if I'd recover my full past. Was that true, or was it convenient for the operation? A flicker of discomfort crossed James's face. The brain injury was real. The amnesia was real. But there were protocols in place to ensure your focus remained on the mission rather than recovering your personal history. They deliberately kept him from remembering us? Haley's voice rose in outrage. Not exactly, James clarified, but they didn't actively encourage recovery of personal memories that might compromise his cover or emotional stability during the operation. The mission prioritized his new identity over his old one. And after the operation concluded, Diana asked, speaking up for the first time since James arrived. Why wasn't his family notified then? James hesitated. By that point, the case had been handed off to other agencies. Sergeant Mitchell, Ethan Reynolds by then, was debriefed and released from his obligations. The decision about contacting his family was left to him. All eyes turned to Connor Ethan, who looked physically ill under their collective gaze. They told me I had a choice, he said quietly, that I could attempt to reconnect with my former life or continue as Ethan Reynolds. The doctors advised against forcing reintegration, said it could trigger a psychological break, and by then, he glanced at Diana, guilt evident in his expression. By then, I'd met Diana, started building a new life that felt real to me, even if it was based on a fabricated identity. So you chose to let us continue believing you were dead, Haley concluded, each word heavy with pain. I convinced myself it was kinder, he admitted. That reappearing after so many years would only disrupt lives that had moved forward without me, that the man I'd become wasn't the man you'd lost anyway. That wasn't your decision to make, Haley repeated, tears threatening again. And what about Lily? Did you ever consider that your daughter had a right to know her father was alive? The mention of Lily seemed to physically affect him. He sank onto the arm of a chair, his face contorted with emotion. I told myself she wouldn't remember me clearly, that the memory of a hero father was better than the reality of a damaged stranger. She kept your photo by her bed until she was 12, Haley said, her voice breaking. She wore your dog tags to a high school graduation. Every Father's Day, she visits your empty grave. Diana made a small sound of distress, turning away from the group. The reality of what her husband had done, the lives affected by his choices, was clearly sinking in. I made a mistake, he whispered, his voice raw. A terrible mistake. I let fear guide my decisions. Fear of more pain, more confusion, more loss. I told myself I was protecting everyone, but I was really protecting myself. The admission hung in the air, the first completely honest thing he'd said since Haley had appeared at his door. No justifications, no explanations, just the truth of his failure. What happens now? Diana asked, her voice small and uncertain. Where do we go from here? It was the question they all faced, how to move forward when the past had been so thoroughly shattered and reassembled in incompatible ways. Lily deserves to know the truth, Haley said firmly. Whether or not you choose to be part of her life going forward, she has the right to know her father didn't die in Afghanistan. He nodded slowly, acceptance replacing the defensive posture he'd maintained since Haley's arrival. You're right. I owe her that much, at least. And us? Diana asked, gesturing between herself and the man she'd known only as Ethan Reynolds. What becomes of our marriage? The legal implications alone were staggering. A man declared dead who wasn't. A second marriage that might not be legally valid. Two women with legitimate claims to the same man, albeit versions of him separated by trauma and time. I don't have answers, he admitted. He looking between the two women who represented his divided life. I only know that I've caused immeasurable pain through my choices, and I need to try to make it right, whatever that means. James cleared his throat. There are also security considerations. Sergeant Mitchell's work helped dismantle a dangerous network, but not all of its members were apprehended. His cover as Ethan Reynolds was partly for his protection. Are you saying he could still be in danger if his true identity becomes known? Reyes asked, professional interest sharpening his tone. It's a possibility we can't dismiss, James acknowledged, which is why I've already contacted certain individuals who can help ensure everyone's safety while this situation resolves. The clinical word, resolves, seemed inadequate for the emotional complexity they faced. Lives had been built and destroyed around the man sitting before them, a man caught between identities, between families, between worlds. Haley looked at the stranger wearing her husband's face, the man she had loved and mourned, the father of her child. He wasn't Connor anymore, not entirely, but he wasn't solely Ethan Reynolds either. He existed in a liminal space between identities, and they all now existed in the uncomfortable truth between what had been and what was. Lily gets off work at 5, she said finally. I'm going to call her and tell her to meet me at our hotel. I think you should be there. He looked up, fear and hope warring in his expression. Do you think that's wise, to spring this on her without preparation? There is no preparation for this, Haley replied, a sad smile touching her lips. No parenting book covers how to tell your daughter her dead father is actually alive and living in Portland with a new wife. Diana flinched at the blunt assessment, but didn't contradict it. I'll be there, he said finally. I owe her that much. I owe all of you so much more than I can ever repay. As Haley gathered her purse to leave, she paused beside him. For a moment she saw glimpses of the man she had married, in the set of his shoulders, the angle of his jaw, the depth of his eyes. But the recognition was fleeting, overtaken by the awareness that they were strangers now, connected by history but separated by years of divergent lives. For what it's worth, she said softly, I'm glad you're alive. Even like this, even with everything that's happened, it's better than you being truly gone. The hotel room felt sterile and impersonal, a neutral ground for the life-altering conversation about to take place. Haley had spent the afternoon in a state of suspended animation, moving through necessary tasks with mechanical precision, while her mind raced ahead to the moment her daughter would come face to face with the father she had believed dead for 15 years. Reyes had tactfully excused himself, promising to remain nearby if needed. James had arranged for a security detail, discreet but vigilant, to monitor the hotel, still concerned about potential risks from Connor's past operation. At 4:30, a knock at the door made Haley's heart leap. Too early to be Lily. She opened it to find him standing there. Still strange to see him in civilian clothes, with his slightly longer hair and beard-stubbled jaw. The physical markers of Connor were all there, but overlaid with the mannerisms and expressions of Ethan. You came alone, she asked, stepping aside to let him enter. Diana needed space, he replied, his voice strained. This has been difficult for her to process. Haley couldn't summon much sympathy for Diana's distress, though the rational part of her acknowledged the woman was as much a victim of circumstance as anyone. I imagine finding out your husband has another family isn't easy. He winced at her tone. She's trying to understand. It's a lot to take in. 15 years worth, Haley agreed, her voice softening slightly. Antagonism wouldn't help anyone, least of all Lily. Did you tell her everything? About your capture? The operation? As much as I could, he confirmed, taking a seat by the window, his posture betraying his nerves. There are still classified elements I can't discuss, and parts I don't fully remember myself. Haley checked her phone. Lily texted. She's on her way. She looked up at him, suddenly uncertain. How should I introduce you? What should I call you? It was a more profound question than it appeared on the surface. The name she used would define how she saw him, how she positioned him in Lily's life. He seemed to understand the weight of the question. I've been Ethan for so long now that Connor feels like someone else, a person I used to be. He hesitated, his eyes meeting hers. But to Lily, I was always Daddy, then Dad, then a memory. Connor then, Haley decided, for her sake. She's grown up loving Connor Mitchell. That's who she needs to see, even if you're not exactly him anymore. He nodded, accepting the name as a role to play or perhaps to reclaim. The silence that fell between them was heavy with unasked questions and unspoken regrets. How is she? He finally asked. Beyond what you've told me, what kind of person has she become? Haley's expression softened. She's incredible. Strong, smart, stubborn. Like you, she's studying psychology. Wants to work with veterans dealing with PTSD and reintegration issues. A sad irony that wasn't lost on either of them. She volunteers at the VA hospital on weekends. I think it makes her feel connected to you somehow. She sounds amazing, he said, pride and regret mingling in his voice. You did that. You raised her to be that person. We both did, Haley corrected him. Even absent, you shaped her. The idea of you, of honoring your memory, of making you proud, has motivated her throughout her life. The realization seemed to hit him with physical force. I've been a ghost to her, a standard to live up to rather than a father to rely on. And now you'll be something else, Haley said quietly. Something we'll all have to figure out together. Her phone chimed with a text message. She's in the lobby. Connor, Ethan, whoever he was now, stood and moved to the far side of the room, as if wanting to make his presence less overwhelming when Lily first entered. His hands trembled slightly, and Haley was reminded that for all his military training and undercover experience, this moment frightened him more than any battlefield. A knock at the door. Haley took a deep breath and opened it. Lily stood in the hallway, her expression curious and slightly concerned. Mom, what's going on? Your text was super cryptic. Come in, sweetheart, Haley said, stepping aside. There's someone you need to meet. Lily entered the room, her eyes immediately finding the man standing by the window. She froze, her face draining of color. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Lily's gaze moved from the stranger to her mother, confusion and dawning realization warring in her expression. What is this? She whispered, her voice tight with emotion. Who is he? Why does he look like... Because I am, Connor said, his voice breaking slightly. Hello, Lily. Lily took a step back, bumping into the closed door. This isn't funny. This can't be real. It's real, Haley confirmed gently. It's complicated and it's going to take time to explain, but this is your father. He didn't die in Afghanistan. Lily's eyes darted between them, looking for signs of a cruel joke or a bizarre misunderstanding. Finding none, her breathing quickened, tears welling in her eyes. How? Why? Where have you been for 15 years? The question contained all the pain and confusion of a child who had grown up mourning a parent, only to discover the grief had been unnecessary, or at least misplaced. It's a long story, Connor began, taking a careful step toward her, one that involves classified military operations, memory loss from trauma, and mistakes. Many mistakes, especially mine. Lily shook her head as if trying to dislodge the impossibility of what she was seeing and hearing. You've been alive this entire time, while we visited an empty grave, while I cried myself to sleep on your birthdays, while Mom raised me alone. The accusation in her voice was justified, even if the full situation was more nuanced than she yet understood. Connor flinched, but didn't look away from his daughter's pain. Yes, he admitted, not making excuses. I've been alive, and there's no adequate apology I can offer for what that has meant for you and your mother. Lily's legs seemed to give out, and she sank to the floor, her back against the door. Haley moved to her side immediately, putting an arm around her shoulders. How long have you known? Lily asked her mother, her voice small and hurt. Just since yesterday, Haley assured her. I found a photo of him online by accident. As soon as I confirmed it was really him, I came to Portland to confront him. I called you as soon as I had answers. Lily nodded. Accepting this then looked back at the man who was biologically her father, but a stranger in every other way. "Do you remember me? Us? Our life before?" Connor hesitated, clearly struggling with how to answer honestly without causing more pain. "I remember fragments," he said finally, "more now than I did years ago. The brain injury I suffered affected my memory, especially of my life before captivity, but I'm starting to remember more. Your 5th birthday party with the butterfly cake, teaching you to ride a bike in the driveway, reading Good Night Moon until I had it memorized because you wouldn't sleep without hearing it." The specific memories seemed to reach Lily in a way general explanations couldn't. Her expression softened slightly, though the hurt and confusion remained. "You could have come back when you started remembering," she said, a statement rather than a question. "I should have," Connor agreed, not defending his choices. "By then, I had built another life, made decisions based on fear rather than courage. I told myself it was better for everyone if Connor Mitchell stayed dead. Better for you, maybe," Lily said, the words sharp, but not without understanding. "Not for us." "No," he acknowledged. "Not for you. I was wrong." The simple admission, devoid of excuses or justifications, seemed to reach Lily. She stood slowly, Haley rising with her, keeping a supportive arm around her waist. "James, Lieutenant Colonel Parker, he knew about this?" Lily asked, looking to her mother. "Not until yesterday," Haley clarified. "He had suspicions based on some things he'd heard over the years, but no confirmation until I found the photo." Lily turned back to Connor, studying him with the analytical gaze that had always reminded Haley of her father. "Do you have another family now?" Connor swallowed hard. "I remarried. Her name is Diana. We don't have children." The information settled heavily between them. Another woman had been his wife, while Lily and Haley believed him dead. Another woman had known him, lived with him, loved him during those lost years. "Does she know about us?" Lily asked. "She does now," Connor replied. "She only learned the truth today, when your mother came to our house." Lily absorbed this, her analytical mind clearly processing the implications. "So she's as blindsided as we are." "In a different way, but yes," Connor confirmed. "None of this is her fault. She believed she married a man named Ethan Reynolds, who had memory issues from an accident." Lily nodded, then asked the question that had been implicit in every exchange. "What happens now?" It was the question none of them had an answer to. How did a family fractured by 15 years of deception and absence move forward? What relationship could exist between a father who had lived another life and a daughter who had grown up with only his memory? "That's something we'll need to figure out together," Haley said, when neither Connor nor Lily spoke. "There's no roadmap for this situation." "I want you to know," Connor said carefully, "that I don't expect anything. I've forfeited any right to make demands or have expectations. I'm here because you deserve the truth, and because—" He paused, emotion overwhelming him momentarily. "Because I've missed so much of your life already. And I don't want to miss any more if you're willing to let me be part of it in some way." The raw honesty in his voice seemed to reach Lily. She took a tentative step toward him, then another, studying his face as if memorizing it, or perhaps comparing it to the photographs she'd grown up with. "You look older," she said simply. A small smile touched his lips. 15 years will do that. "Your eyes are the same," she continued. "I used to look at your pictures and Mom would say I had your eyes." "You do," he confirmed, his voice thick with emotion. "You always did." Lily stood before him now, close enough to touch though neither reached out. "I don't know what to call you," she admitted. "You're my father, but I haven't earned the right to be Dad," he finished for her. "I understand. Connor is fine. Or Ethan, if that's easier. Whatever makes you comfortable." Lily nodded, then did something that surprised both her parents. She pulled out her phone and took a photo of Connor. "What are you doing?" Haley asked, bewildered. "Making sure this is real," Lily explained, looking down at the image on her screen. "Making sure when I wake up tomorrow, I know this wasn't a dream or a hallucination." She looked back up at Connor. For 15 years, all I've had are old photos, pictures of a man frozen in time. Now I have one that's current, real. The simple act, documenting the present rather than preserving the past, felt symbolic somehow. A first step toward accepting a new reality, no matter how complicated or painful. I have a lot of questions, Lily said, putting her phone away. About what happened to you, about where you've been, about who you are now. I'll answer everything I can, Connor promised. Some details remain classified, but I'll tell you as much as I'm permitted to. And I need time, Lily continued. This is overwhelming. Take all the time you need, Connor assured her. I'm not going anywhere. He paused, realizing the unintentional irony of his words. I mean, I'm here now, for good. Whatever relationship you want or don't want with me, that's your choice to make. Lily nodded, then looked to her mother. I think I need some air. Can we go for a walk? All of us. The request surprised Haley, who had expected Lily might need space away from Connor to process. But perhaps being outside, moving, would make the conversation feel less intense, less confined. Of course, Haley agreed, looking to Connor, who nodded. As they prepared to leave the hotel room, Lily stopped at the door, turning back to look at the man who had been a ghost for most of her life. One more thing, she said, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. I need to know, not all the classified details or the psychological explanations, just the heart of it. Why didn't you come back to us when you could have? The question cut to the core of everything, the choices, the deception, the years of absence. Connor met his daughter's gaze, owing her the most honest answer he could give. Because I was afraid, he said simply. Afraid I wasn't the man you remembered. Afraid I couldn't be the father you deserved. Afraid of failing you again. He swallowed hard. It was the worst mistake of my life, and one I'll spend the rest of my days trying to make right if you'll let me. The truth hung between them, imperfect but honest. Lily nodded once, accepting the answer even if she couldn't yet forgive the actions it explained. Let's go for that walk, she said, opening the door. We have 15 years to talk about. 3 months later, Haley stood in her kitchen in Springfield, Massachusetts, watching through the window as Lily and Connor sat on the back porch. They were deep in conversation, Lily gesturing animatedly while Connor listened with the intense focus Haley remembered from their early years together. These visits had become a bi-weekly occurrence, Connor flying from Portland to spend weekends reconnecting with his daughter. The relationship was evolving slowly, cautiously, but with genuine effort on both sides. Lily had insisted on one-on-one time with her father, separate from the complex dynamics between him and Haley. Coffee? James asked, appearing beside her with a fresh pot. Please, Haley agreed, holding out her mug. James had become a regular presence as well, serving as both buffer and bridge between past and present. They seem to be doing well today, he observed, following her gaze to the father and daughter outside. She's telling him about her research project, Haley explained, on trauma and memory formation. Inspired by his experience, obviously, though she doesn't advertise that connection to her professors. The academic interest provided safer ground for Lily and Connor, a way to understand his experience through scientific lens rather than purely emotional ones. It gave Lily a framework for processing the impossible situation while using her professional interests as a buffer against overwhelming feelings. And how are you doing with all this? James asked, his tone gentle but direct. Haley considered the question, as she had almost daily since that moment in Portland when her world had tilted on its axis yet again. Still processing, she admitted. Some days I'm grateful he's alive, regardless of the circumstances. Other days, I'm furious about the years we lost. Both reactions seem entirely justified, James noted. The doorbell rang, interrupting their conversation. Haley glanced at her watch with surprise. That must be Diana. She's early. The most unexpected development over the past months had been the tentative relationship forming between Haley and Diana. After the initial shock had worn off, Diana had reached out, suggesting they meet without Connor present. That first conversation, awkward, painful but necessary, had led to others. Two women trying to understand their shared connection to a man who existed between two identities. Haley opened the door to find Diana standing on her porch, looking as uncomfortable as anyone might when visiting their husband's other wife's home. "I hope I'm not interrupting," Diana said. "The flight got in earlier than expected." "Not at all," Haley assured her, stepping aside. "Connor and Lily are out back. James is here too." Diana nodded, following Haley inside. Their relationship defied conventional labels. Not friends exactly, but not enemies either. Allies of a sort, both trying to navigate an impossible situation with as much grace as they could muster. "How are things in Portland?" Haley asked as they moved through the house. "Quiet," Diana replied. "The security concerns seem to have eased. Your investigator friend, Mr. Reyes, he said the last of the potential threats have been contained. The security concerns had proven legitimate." In the weeks following Haley's discovery, two former associates from the network Connor had helped dismantle had surfaced, apparently alerted by database searches for his real name. James's military contacts had handled the situation, but it had underscored the reality that Connor's past could still pose dangers. "That's a relief," Haley said. "Lily's been worried, though she tries not to show it." They reached the kitchen, where James greeted Diana with polite formality. Through the window, they could see the exact moment Connor noticed Diana's arrival. His posture straightened, his expression shifting in subtle recognition. Haley tried not to analyze what that meant, how much of him still belonged to his second life. "I'll let them know you're here," she offered, but Diana shook her head. "Let them finish their conversation. There's actually something I wanted to discuss with you first." The serious tone caught Haley's attention. "Is everything all right?" Diana glanced at James. "It's somewhat private. I'll give you ladies some space," James said immediately, taking his coffee to the living room. Once alone, Diana took a deep breath. "I've been offered a position at Massachusetts General," she said without preamble. "A research opportunity in their physical therapy department, focusing on veterans with combat injuries." The implication hung in the air between them. "You're moving to Boston?" Haley asked, careful to keep her tone neutral. Diana nodded. "I'm considering it. It's an amazing professional opportunity, and it would allow Connor to be closer to Lily." The unspoken question was clear. How would Haley feel about her husband's second wife living less than 2 hours away? About Connor potentially relocating to be near both women in his divided life? "Have you discussed this with Connor?" Haley asked. "Not yet," Diana admitted. "I wanted to talk to you first. This affects your life too, your relationship with Lily. I don't want to intrude where I'm not welcome." The consideration surprised and touched Haley. Over these months, she'd come to recognize that Diana was as much a victim of circumstance as anyone. She hadn't knowingly married another woman's husband. She'd built a life with a man she loved, only to discover that life was constructed on a foundation of government secrets and traumatic memory loss. "I appreciate that," Haley said sincerely. "But Connor is Lily's father. His being closer would be good for her, for them, and for you," Diana asked quietly. "Would it be good for you to have him nearby? To have us nearby?" It was the question Haley had been avoiding. In the month since discovering Connor was alive, she'd focused on Lily's needs, on facilitating their reunification while protecting her daughter from further pain. She'd pushed aside her own complicated feelings about the man who had been her husband, who still was legally her husband, according to recent consultations with lawyers, given the unusual circumstances of his death. "I don't know," Haley admitted honestly. "Part of me still loves the man I married, but that man doesn't fully exist anymore. Connor is someone else now, someone shaped by experiences I wasn't part of, someone who built a life with you." Diana nodded, understanding in her eyes. "And Ethan isn't fully the man I married either. Learning about his past, about you and Lily, it changed him. Or maybe it just revealed parts of him that were always there, buried beneath the amnesia and the cover identity." The two women regarded each other across the kitchen island, connected by their love for different versions of the same man, by the impossible situation they were all trying to navigate with whatever grace they could muster. "Take the job," Haley said finally. "If it's what you want professionally, Lily would benefit from having her father nearby, and you and we'll figure it out as we go. We've been doing all right so far." Relief crossed Diana's features. "Thank you. I haven't decided for certain yet, but knowing how you feel helps." The back door opened, and Connor stepped inside, hesitating when he saw the two women in conversation. The look on his face, caught between his two lives, never fully belonging to either, reminded Haley of the impossible position they all occupied. "Diana," he said, genuine warmth in his voice, "I didn't realize you'd arrived." "Just a few minutes ago," she replied. "I didn't want to interrupt your time with Lily." Lily appeared behind her father, her expression carefully neutral as she observed the dynamic between the three adults. At 20, she showed remarkable maturity in handling the bizarre family situation she'd been thrust into, but Haley knew it wasn't easy for her. "Mom," Lily said, "Dad and I were thinking of getting lunch at that new place downtown. Would you and Diana like to join us?" The invitation, and the casual use of Dad, which had only recently returned to Lily's vocabulary, spoke volumes about her progress in accepting the new reality. "That sounds nice," Haley replied, looking to Diana. "If you're not too tired from your flight, I'd like that," Diana agreed. As they prepared to leave, gathering jackets and purses, Connor found himself momentarily alone with Haley in the entryway. "Diana told me about the job offer," he said quietly. "You were eavesdropping?" Haley asked, though without real accusation. "Open windows," he explained with a small smile. "Some habits from my other life are hard to break." Haley nodded, understanding what he meant. The skills that had kept him alive during his covert operations didn't simply disappear because his cover had been blown. "Would you want to move to Boston?" she asked directly. "Be closer to Lily?" "To both of you," he clarified, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that reminded her of the man she'd married. "If that wouldn't make things more complicated." "Everything about this situation is complicated," Haley pointed out. "But Lily would benefit from having you nearby. She's missed so much time with you already." Connor nodded, then hesitated before adding, "And you? How would you feel about it?" The question echoed Diana's earlier one, but carried different weight coming from him. Haley considered her answer carefully. "I'm still figuring that out," she admitted. "Some days I look at you and see the man I married. Other days you're a stranger wearing his face. Most days it's somewhere in between." "I understand," he said, and she believed he did. "I feel the same confusion when I look in the mirror sometime. The memories of Connor Mitchell have been returning more consistently, but they still feel like they happened to someone else, someone connected to me, but not quite me." Haley nodded, appreciating his honesty. "We have time to figure it out, all of us." Time, the very thing they'd lost so much of already, now stretched before them as an opportunity rather than a reminder of what had been taken. Time to heal, to understand, to build whatever new relationships might be possible from the wreckage of the past. "Ready?" Lily called from the front door, where she stood with Diana and James. Connor and Haley joined them, stepping out into the bright autumn afternoon. As they walked toward downtown, they formed an unconventional group, a daughter with her once-dead father, two women who had both been his wife, and a retired officer who had helped bring the truth to light. There were no easy answers for what they were, what they would become to each other. The legal questions remained complex. Connor technically had two valid marriages, a situation the courts had never quite encountered before. The emotional questions were even more complicated. How to reconcile love and loss, betrayal and forgiveness, memory and its absence. But as they walked together through the streets of Springfield, there was a sense of possibility that hadn't existed 3 months ago. Wounds that had festered in darkness for 15 years were now exposed to light and air, painful, but finally able to begin healing. Lily fell into step beside her father, pointing out changes to the town since his deployment 15 years earlier. Diana and Haley walked slightly behind them, their conversation tentative but genuine. James brought up the rear, watchful as always, the guardian of this strange family's fragile peace. They had all been broken by secrets and circumstance, by decisions made by others and choices made in fear. The future remained uncertain, complicated by the tangle of their interconnected lives. But they were facing it together, in the clear light of truth, however painful that truth might be. For 15 years, Haley had preserved Connor's memory for their daughter, never imagining he lived on as another man with another life. For 15 years, Connor had existed as Ethan Reynolds, haunted by fragments of a past he couldn't fully recall. For 15 years, their lives had diverged along paths that should never have reconnected. Yet here they were, walking together on an autumn afternoon, navigating the impossible space between what had been lost and what might still be found. Not healed, not whole, but no longer living in the shadow of a lie. And for today at least, that was enough.